Well, what a fall. The world saw Justin Welby crowned the new King Charles. But now Welby, Archbishop of Canterbury, the titular head of the world's 85 million Anglicans, has been forced to quit for not doing enough about, or some say even covering up, pedophilia in his church. Child abuse at any rate, not doing more when he was warned about a barrister called John Smith, a sadist who abused boys at Christian summer camps organised by the church, beat them so badly that some were left dripping with blood. And this apparently went on for decades. Welby said he didn't really know what was going on. Has now said, well, when I was informed about this guy in 2013, I was told that police had been notified. I believed wrongly that an appropriate resolution would follow. It is very clear that I must take personal and institutional responsibility for the long and re-traumatising period between 2013 and 2024. Might seem a harsh call, but remember how woke Welby was. He called on white Christians to repent of their prejudices after the killing of George Floyd over in America. But supposedly he didn't do much about real crimes right under his own nose. Joining me from London is Patrick Christys, star presenter of GB News. Patrick, great to see you again. I haven't seen proof that Welby actually knew decades ago about this monster and all that he had done. The guy's since died. Is it right that he stepped down?
I think it is right that he steps down. There are rumblings that he had an inkling that there was something wrong with John Smythe back in 1981, which is a heck of a long time to maybe become a bit more inquisitive about the whole thing. Then in 2013, he did actually know. So he had the dossier of all of the evidence, or some of the evidence anyway, about John Smythe. And then he decided to just set that to one side. And that meant that when this monster died in 2018, he died without ever having face justice. But you're right about Welby in terms of how woke he is. And I've got a bit of a theory about this, Andrew. I mean, he must have known that something like this was coming down the track. I mean, he must have known that there was a review into this and what that review would find. And I can't help but wonder whether or not banging on about slavery reparations, banging on about open borders, entertaining all of the gender nonsense and the climate crisis and all of that, everything that Welby's done, reparations for slavery. I mean, £100 million he set aside from the Church of England for reparations for slavery, whether or not all of that was a bit of a cover to try to curry favour with the woke lot before this landed.
Honestly, I'm so reminded of Mrs. Jellyby in Charles Dickens' great novel Bleak House, who could see all the way to Africa to help the people there, but couldn't see what was going on under her own nose at home. I've got to say, you've created embarrassment for your Prime Minister because you interviewed a friend of mine, John McTernan, a former senior advisor to Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair. Now, he tells me in his defence that you kept him waiting for half an hour, or maybe he got a bit tetchy, I don't know. But he then let fly about the farmers who are planning to strike against the government, blocks, shops and everything, or the wharves. They're protesting against a massive tax increase by this Labour government. Here's John.
Personally, in favour of doing to farmers who want to go on the streets, we can do to them what Margaret Thatcher did to the miners.
So just to be clear, John, you would, beat them up?
No, close them. I mean, this industry we could do without. If people are so upset that they want to go on the streets and spray slurry on them, then we don't need the small farmers.
Well, that's a rather brutal statement. McTernan tells me he meant to be flippant, didn't come across that way, and the British Prime Minister, all the way in that climate summit in Azerbaijan we were talking about earlier in the show, had to say, no, that's not our plans. What sort of impact has this made?
It's made a much bigger impact than I ever thought it would, actually. It's had several million views online. And a lot of people are saying, well, this is it now. Labour have let the cat out of the bag, which is that this is their plan, really, to hammer small farmers into the ground. I mean, the fact is that their plans will do that. People are going to have to sell up their farms. We're going to end up having to import more food from abroad. And it is a bit of a harebrained policy. And there are protests planned for the 19th, where goodness only knows what could happen. But, I mean, they used to call the Conservatives the nasty party. But when you have a look at the way that the Labour Party have been going around quite callously doing this stuff, you could argue that's quite nasty. It's also not a great look that our Minister for Rural Affairs was in Colombia at a climate change conference, which obviously he'd flown to, at the time that it was announced that farmers in this country were going to get hammered. And he doesn't really seem to care about it.
Oh, I don't know. This whole thing, farmers seem to be getting in the neck all over Europe, and New Zealand had protests too, often for global warming reasons. This is more about not being able to pass on their farm to their children with what's really a death duty like nobody's business. Alison Pearson is a columnist with the Daily Telegraph, conservative paper, had 2 police officers turn up to her home on Remembrance Sunday to inform her she was being investigated over a post on X last year they claimed stirred racial hatred. She said, "What post?" They said, "Oh, we don't know. We can't tell you." Who complained? "Oh, we don't know, or we can't tell you." This is like a Kafka novel. What's going on?
Yeah, well, can I just say, as somebody who has Alison Pearson on my panel, I would not have liked to have been the police officers that knocked on her door to inform her that they were investigating her over a post. This is absolutely bonkers. It's completely bonkers. I thought we'd let this go. Remember when it was all kicking off in the summer riots and people were being arrested left, right, and centre? I thought we'd move beyond that. But to have someone like Alison Pearson conceivably facing charges, she's not allowed to know who's made the complaint. She's not allowed to know what the complaint is. Almost impossible, therefore, to form a defence, isn't it, really? I mean, Alison Pearson has got the support of the nation here, and it's very, very, very worrying times. If you think that our police force feels comfortable enough knocking on the door of one of this country's best-known journalists, one of the most kind of, strongest columnists, then they wouldn't mind doing it for anybody else, would they? It's designed to scare people, I think.
Oh, Patrick. What? This is just straight out of the trial by Franz Kafka. I mean, I keep doing literary references. This is weird. Patrick Christys, thanks for your time.